Hello, everybody. Welcome to the third meeting of the Books of Note Book Club. My name is Sarah Stovall. I'm the communications manager for Sarasota Orchestra. And today we're going to be talking about Palaces for the People, written by Eric Klinenberg. Our assistant principal cellist, Christopher Schnell, selected this book for the Books That Move Us book club to dive into. Before we get started today, if this is your first time joining the book club, I want to introduce you to a couple of features. If you would like to introduce a question or a discussion topic to this day's session, please use, if you're here with us in the live Zoom, please use the chat and Q&A features that you can find at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you're joining us on Facebook when this meeting airs as a recording later on our Facebook page, we'd love for you to chime in there in the comments section as well. I want to introduce those who are here with us today. We have there's Christopher Schnell. Hi, Christopher. Along with us, we also have our Director of Artistic Planning, Carrie Smith, and violinist Mia Lady, who are going to be joining in the discussion today. And we start off our book clubs with a little icebreaker question: what's in my mug? And I've got herb tea this morning in my infuser, this handy dandy infuser mug, which I love and use on the daily. Chris, what's in your mug this morning?
In my Sarasota Orchestra mug.
Very nice.
Some matcha green tea.
Excellent. Yeah. Mia, what's in your mug?
I have coffee.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. And how about you, Carrie?
I have cold brew.
Excellent. And go ahead, you all, and tell us in the chat what's in your mug this morning. Warm up that chat room and let's get this conversation going. So I thought we can start off today. You know, this concept of social infrastructure is a big one, and it's a new one it was new to me. So I'm grateful to Chris for bringing this book to our attention. And I thought we might talk about what some of our favorite examples of local social infrastructure are and why, and maybe that'll give us a sense of what social infrastructure is and how it works, and how it works well, what good examples of social infrastructure are. Chris, I want to give the floor to you first.
Well, I've been a big fan of the county library system. I use the Selby branch downtown, the Gulfgate branch, and Fruitville, because I live kind of in the middle of all of those. So it depends on where I'm driving around that day. Library has been great, especially when my kids were young. They're about 15 and 13 now. When they were young, I mean, we got so many kids books there and activities, and I use it all the time just to borrow books for my own enrichment. In fact, I heard about this book through a favorite podcast, and 99% Invisible. I'd highly recommend everybody check that out if you haven't yet. But then I discovered that Eric Klinenberg was coming to Selby Library to give a talk. So right after a GE concert, a Great Escapes concert, we always use the initials in-house. I with my black clothes and my cello, I hurried over to the library and got to hear him speak in person about his book and ordered my own copy. So anyway, library. I'm a big fan. So is Klinenberg, as we'll discuss later.
Yes. Yeah. Carrie, what about you? What's your favorite item of local social infrastructure?
Sure. So I have sort of a unique one, and it's sort of an extension of everything that I sort of do downtown, and in particularly during this time of COVID, where we're trying to be careful and outdoor spaces are more ideal, especially for socializing with people who are outside of your bubble, which for me is basically every person in Sarasota. So I particularly love Paul Thorpe Park, I did not know the name of it until maybe 20 minutes ago when I was looking it up. Like, what is it called? It's at the intersection of Lemon and Pineapple, where there's sort of that curve, and there is a park with benches that are nicely spaced out, and there's a fountain with a mermaid on it, and then there are also benches that swing. And the reason that Paul Thorpe Park has become so important to me, I think, is because I will go grab coffee either at Rise and Nyes or from O&A Coffee and the Sarasota Farmers Market, or in Burns Court, and typically need a place outdoors to either sit and talk if I'm with friends, and need to be able to socially distance even outside. And so that park has been amazing. I feel like I've sort of serendipitously ended up there almost every week since this summer. And without that, I'm sure that it wasn't built for a pandemic, in mind, but it's just been such an amazing asset as I'm trying to sort of keep socializing, keep active, and keep engaging in downtown Sarasota.
Excellent. Mia, what about you?
So I'm gonna have to copy Chris a little bit, and I love the Selby Library. I actually go there between our double rehearsals sometimes, because we'll have maybe 2 hours in between, which is enough time to have lunch and have time, but maybe not enough to go run a ton of errands. So I like to eat and then go to the library and then come back to rehearse. And then, of course, I keep saying Selby, so I have to think about the gardens. I love those too as well.
Yeah. For me, it's I also have a favorite park. I live in the Gillespie Park neighborhood, and so I'm really, really fortunate to live just a block away from Gillespie Park, and it too has become kind of a very essential place for me to get out of my apartment, stretch my legs, and it's become, I feel like it's become busier and busier, especially as we've been adapting and figuring out how to best utilize these outdoor spaces safely. So it has become a really great place for me to go and just see people that who I either kind of know from the neighborhood, or I've started to notice people who are regulars who get out and are walking around at the same time I am, and it really is just great. It's been a great asset for my well-being. And one of my favorite times to go is I think it's on certain days of the week. Now there are the local schools will have, I think, from like the Sarasota Academy of Arts and Sciences or the Military Academy that are close by. There will be groups of students out there doing like exercises and drills, and it's just like, it's great to see that kind of that normalcy, that they're wearing their masks, they're being safe, but they're out there making great use of the public space. So I'm grateful for Gillespie Park. We have somebody at the chat here, Cynthia. She loves GT Bray Park in Bradenton, and as do we here at the orchestra, as we've been hosting some of our outdoor concerts there with our winds and brass. We've had 2 there, and we've got 1 more coming up in March. So that's an awesome park as well. So in the book, Eric Klinenberg, he talks about so many different kinds of social infrastructure, beyond parks and libraries. Although I agree, libraries seem to be one of his favorites, as well as sports teams, like youth athletic leagues. So which examples of social infrastructure in the book, really got you most excited, or that you found most inspiring? And I think this will help us kind of continue to define that notion of social infrastructure and how it works.
One thing that really surprised me in the book, like I didn't know this before, but he talks about how well kept spaces. So in like two basically equal socioeconomic neighborhoods, if one has a lot of abandoned lots and garbage and it's not well kept, but the other one is more well kept and it's more conducive to foot traffic, and it will be safer and people will have a better quality of life. So I didn't ever really put those two together, that taking care of your community, aesthetically, but also functionally, really leads to a better quality of life. And then he talks about how community gardens in tougher neighborhoods like become just transformative because, there was someone who was quoted saying that even, she said, gangbangers respect the community garden because they have family and they have grandparents and friends who walk through there and are active, and they respect it. So I thought that was just really interesting, that there's a connection between aesthetic, function, and safety.
Mm-hmm. I would second you on the community gardens one. Really stood out to me. Because I used to have a plot at the Orange Blossom Community Garden here in Sarasota, which is it's very centrally located, like close to 18th. So it's got proximity to Newtown, and it's got proximity to downtown, and it can serve a wide a broad swath of the populace here. And I did get to see that. I felt like I got to see that in action, like especially bringing in these little kids to the children's garden and learning about how to grow nutritious food and getting them interested in eating stuff like broccoli, because if they grew it themselves, then they were like, oh well, yeah, let's try it at home. And yeah, bringing so many different parts of the community together, and it really did just kind of create this sense of togetherness with people that I would never ordinarily cross paths with. They were really good. The garden leaders at the time were really good about organizing kind of garden parties where we would come together to help with the compost or do something that required a big team effort. And so the community garden is just a really near and dear one to my heart as well. Chris, what about you in terms of the examples in the book? What really jumped out at you as an important one?
I was really struck by the amazing designs they've come up with to blend hard infrastructure for like protection from flooding or whatever, and how that can be integrated into social infrastructure as well. Like the examples he gave, like in Rotterdam, the rain and stormwater management, keeping the sea back. Somehow they've managed to make that a beautiful place and for people to enjoy as well. I think that's so amazing that you can blend the two. It doesn't have to be just utilitarian or just aesthetically pleasing, or you can actually do both.
Yeah, I loved that idea of thinking about things not as either an aesthetic addition or a functional addition, but that they can be married together and you can have just exponential benefits from both aspects of those.
Mm-hmm. Even with libraries, I mean, I guess you'd say their primary function is, information, knowledge, but, by extension, there are so many other social benefits that can happen along with that. Like the whole story of the New York Library where they have the video bowling league, and things like that really bring people in that space. It's really cool.
I was so confused by that. I had to read that twice. I thought they were actually in a bowling alley and I had missed something. And then they talk about the librarian calling the other branch librarian. And I was like, wait, video bowling was a new concept for me. But it was very cool. And obviously the people involved were very enthusiastic. So
I wanted to share a few more comments from folks who are with us here in the live Zoom. Pam mentioned the Ringling Bridge is one of her favorite pieces of social infrastructure, and the spaces, she says, and the spaces around it for people, pets, and water activities. And yeah, I think that's the Ringling Bridge is such a staple, especially for the way it gets people. People use it as like a way to like it's almost like a great friend date, place, or it gets people together to exercise and to enjoy those beautiful views. I love the Ringling Bridge as well.
Were you guys around before that bridge was built?
Yeah, I don't think I was here.
Yeah, I've been here 25 years now, so I was here with the former bridge, and it's amazing the difference. The former bridge certainly got use, but I think just the fact that this bridge is wider and more visually appealing, I think more people want to walk and bike on it now. Of course, there's probably more people around than 25 years ago too.
Right, but it shows to go, that design matters. It matters so much to inviting people in. Yeah. I was also really struck too by the examples, these enormously ambitious and progressive projects that were around mitigating climate change, and helping to preserve and protect vulnerable places, particularly in keeping water out, but that didn't just erect a barrier, but created these places where people could come together and help to create those social cohesions that Klinenberg says is so important to create these the connections that make communities more resilient in times of disaster, to be able to know and to know who to help and how to help, and to feel more just connected and empowered, I think, in that way. Just kind of transcending isolation it's so important to feeling like you are, I think, empowered to help out in times of massive collective need, like during a natural disaster. But as we've all been, I know, we've been using our physical spaces really differently, in the past year, and I, so many of us, as this Zoom platform, the Zoom environment is an example of how we're using technology more and more to get together. And Klinenberg is definitely not complimentary of the internet or social media in terms of that being a valid or viable social infrastructure. But this book came out in 2018, I think it was. So it's this book kind of blew my mind, and how contemporary it is, but how we it's he didn't necessarily see this coming. So let's talk about virtual spaces, and since they have become a bit of a necessity, are you guys finding any ways to get around some of the drawbacks, some of the limitations of virtual space, to make it more of a better social infrastructure, a better tool?
We start by maybe listing some of the drawbacks, like for instance, the
Yes.
fact that we can't have side conversations on Zoom, or even interjecting is a little more difficult because it's really one person at a time. And so you're not going to have the situation where like maybe it's at a party and everybody's talking and you can jump from conversation to conversation, or a situation where meetings can just be free form, which I know maybe that's not a drawback, but we join meetings with a very clear start and end date. We're not just working together and talking as things come up, and having that kind of dead space where we don't have to be on an agenda, because we're all working, more just co-work.
Yeah, we've definitely found that, I think, in terms of like the creative aspects at the orchestra, just being able to like pop your head in and be like, hey, what do you think about this idea? And having that sort of instant feedback so that you can keep working. It's not there. So it has to be very structured and you can't kind of lose sight of it. And it's hard. It in a lot of ways, I feel like work life now, it's you have to be incredibly diligent and organized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. And with, I do find that I've become a lot more intentional about getting in touch with friends and family. Like it's just, we make a lot more plans in my family for Zoom calls and touching base, which is kind of a nice side effect. I feel like I am more in touch with my family more, a lot more, but still with like other forms of connectivity like social media, I do feel like it gets really overwhelming really quickly. And I know that in terms of what I think is one of the key, what Klinenberg wants to posit as one of the key elements of good social infrastructure is bringing, lots of different ideas and different people together. And, I think social media in theory does that, but we find that in practice, in reality, it doesn't. They're designed to show us show us more content that we like, that we want to see, things that we're familiar with, things that resonate with us, that we engage with on those bases. So I think
it's difficult to see the person behind
yeah.
what they're writing, and I find myself sometimes being affected just by the writing style, and I'll even miss some of the content of maybe what they're trying to say, and just be turned off or distracted by the way that it's said. I didn't mean to direct our flow to the negative, but I thought it might be nice to just list what we're going to talk about, like the drawbacks that we see before we talk about how it's counteracted. And one of the comments in the chat is actually that because of Zoom, we have some people who weren't even in Sarasota who are joining us today. So we have, I think Rick commented saying that he found out about us through his a family member who snowbirds in Sarasota. So that is one of the amazing things about technology, is that it reaches us out to people who we might not have just crossed paths with in a more organic social infrastructure facilitated way. For me, most of my friends, since I'm new to Sarasota, I've only been here for about 2.5 years. A lot of my friends are not anywhere near me, and the pandemic and being on Zoom and being online has given me an excuse to be like, oh, we need to have a game night, or let's talk. Versus I think before, when we were in our regular lives, I don't think anyone would have expected someone to be like, can we video chat for an hour on a Friday night? Yeah, like it just wouldn't have felt as maybe permissible or totally expected and fine as it does now. So that's a nice way to overcome certain aspects of technology.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have other solutions to the drawbacks that I made us bring up, or.
Yeah.
For me, it's mostly avoiding Zoom as much as possible. Just stick to or use the technologies to facilitate face-to-face, or 6 feet apart faces, whatever. Yeah, I mean, I found the whole pandemic situation to be rather depressing and anxiety producing. And I naturally want to just kind of retreat in that kind of mindset. And I know that's not good for my mental health, and nor that of my friends and family, neighbors.
Yeah, I echo that too, and I'm grateful for, you know, the ease, I suppose, of technology for being able to, you know, reach out to somebody, and, you know, if I'm having a rough time and, you know, just need a moment of human connection, I can text somebody and say, hey, you got a few minutes? And want to say hi, you know, and it so there is something to be said about the ease of connection, as well as, yes, being able, like Mia said, being able to just get in touch with people across great space as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as much as Facebook fulfills Zuckerberg's idealistic vision for it, you know, when it really is connecting people, then it's the greatest thing. But, you know, in as much as Facebook, the corporation, manipulates the medium to generate its revenue, and, you know, I think it creates some pretty awful results.
Right.
I thought it was so interesting when he talks about how the Facebook algorithm directs you to posts or content that is like generally more emotional or dramatic. And I was like, I didn't know that. I don't, I feel like I'm more of a lurker on social media and already a little standoffish with it in terms of posting. So I don't really research that kind of stuff, but I was thinking like, oh, the next time I want likes, I just need to be like, help me or something. And then be like, come to this concert. But you know, that'll get the algorithm's attention. But I was like, just like probably naively surprised by how sort of transparent it was. On the one hand, I can see how, you know, for the sake of arguing that it is social infrastructure, if someone needs help and they're posting, it helps their friends reach out to them, know what's going on, and almost like create an alert. But on the other hand, it talked about how Facebook was enabling all of this political confrontation and meddling, and just a lot of fighting online, which, you know, isn't necessarily a healthy thing when it's all in this like Facebook context.
Yes. I have maybe, you know, one or two, you know, friends, you know, who are who come from academic backgrounds, and they, you know, they have studied rhetoric and debate and kind of the art of sharing ideas, and they try so hard. They really do try really hard to use Facebook as a way to have conversations, and I think almost invariably they take social media breaks because it's so difficult. It can be really difficult to have those reasoned, measured discussions on Facebook. But I know that there are people out there who are trying to use it as a discursive tool, and who knows? Maybe they are, you know, maybe they're trying to, you know, affect the algorithm a little bit. Maybe they're having their own little like butterfly effect on that. Well, let's how about we turn the topic to music? And I know that's all, you know, that's a shared passion here, and with everybody who's watching. And how, you know, an institution like Sarasota Orchestra or the concert hall, how that fits into social infrastructure, particularly as a center for community connection. I know that with now that the orchestra we've started having concerts again, you know, in Holly Hall, safe and socially distanced, musicians and audience alike. I know we've been getting audience feedback on how just how moving these experiences are, and how powerful. But has anybody else, I mean, musician, I'd love to hear from Mia and Chris about what that's been like for you guys to be back in the concert hall with an audience. and the kinds of, the human connections that you're getting.
It's really encouraging to see live faces in front of us, even though the challenges of playing in these groups so many feet apart from each other, and it's difficult to achieve the best results, but I don't know, challenge accepted though.
Yeah.
Because we really feel the reaction to people, and when you have that smaller group, we notice that every time we conclude the concerts, at least a few people will just call out and say thank you, because it feels like we're in a real chamber music setting, a small house gathering or something, because of the small numbers. I don't know, it's been enjoyable to do concerts like this.
Even just the little change, which was necessary for safety of the audience staying in their seats after the conclusion of a concert, has had this, at least for me, unexpected effect of feeling like they're still with us when the lights come back up. And so there's like this almost magical moment after the performance, after the applause, after everyone is like, okay, that was whatever they're feeling, like hopefully that was a fun time, that was great. And for us, we're like, we did it, and then the lights come up and it's this like kind of after space, but we're all still in it, and we have to get off the stage in our order and everything, but there's like a split second afterwards that I've never actually had in a concert setting, just the way that it's usually structured. And it does feel surprisingly close, and like we've all come together to do something. Like it's not just a performance and then a passive interaction. It's everybody came together to do something. I don't know if it feels like that in the audience. I don't know if anybody in the chat has been to one of these and can confirm or deny or completely disagree with me, but that's something that I noticed and that I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised, and kind of heartwarmed about.
I think that's a really interesting comment about sort of the unity between audience member and performer in the moment. I've been thinking a lot about, as we're going through this pandemic and as orchestras everywhere are shifting out of necessity, but also out of a, desire to be forward thinking and what orchestras can be in the 21st century. And I think that a lot of people agree that they're not only an artistic center, but also kind of a center for intellectual thought and for a lot of people, spirituality, just in the sense of there's something that touches your soul, and there's a reason why you go back, and there's a reason why you subscribe, and there's a reason why it's integrated into your life, because it does nourish you in an intangible way. So I definitely think there is something to it. I do also think there is something to, like having a musicians book club and engaging with people that way, because our musicians are such accomplished, interesting people. But also there's a common thread between us and between the Sarasota community. So I definitely think that's something there. I think there's something to what you said, Mia, that's like something we need to continue to keep it spinning.
It's been really fun for me to watch that, to see that aspect of how music works to bring people together, to watch that unfold in in these public park settings with our outdoor concerts. We have patrons sign up to come, but then, we also have people who are just there in the park that day. And it's, it becomes such, it becomes, it's so neat to watch people who, are just a family who is you know, enjoying the park with their kids, or, you know, a couple who are out getting some exercise walking, and they hear the music and they come and they, you know, they find a comfortable space. And there's just a feeling of togetherness that has been so rare and so precious during these times. And, you know, no matter what the music is, I mean, it just it has this opening effect, I think, on people. And I watch people's I just watch them kind of sit and relax and just have this moment, this really special moment with each other, with musicians. You know, the musicians are up there, our brass and winds, they're sharing stories, they're telling jokes. And it is just like this incredible human connection, and bringing people together who, many of whom who are you already connected through their love of the orchestra and through music, but also including people from the community who wouldn't, you know, who didn't think they were going to get a chance to see some live music that day. It's been those afternoons have been kind of on the magical side for me, I would say. And yeah, like I said, it's neat to see those two aspects of social infrastructure, kind of, you know, music as a kind of a creator of connection, and then these physical spaces of parks. It's been really neat to see those come together and cross-pollinate, and it's been fun having the book too, this book in the back of my head as I've been attending those.
So how would a future music center for us, how would the building itself, you know, the concert hall itself, encourage that connection between us all, and you know, really serve the community in that social infrastructure way? And
Yeah, I think the aesthetically pleasing aspect is always helpful. I mean, especially now in the social media age, but I think that a lot of orchestras that have undergone a sort of like a new music center expansion, they think about how the building itself can serve people. And there's kind of like a functional aspect to it, because if it's pleasing and people want to have parties or meetings or things like that, it can become a rental venue. And then that, of course, is great for additional revenue. But one thing like I observed with Walt Disney Concert Hall, which of course is like this great Frank Gehry building, is that just physically being in that space was so special for people in Los Angeles that a concert was like a cherry on top. It was really, you know, people would do photo shoots there and come, and I think it was pretty common, I think, for people to just want to physically be there. And of course, you know, I think Frank Gehry's pretty busy. You know, not like he's first on the list in Sarasota or something, but just that aspect is really fantastic. The other thing that I think is or could be important, and something that could be really achievable in Sarasota, is thinking about integrating outdoor spaces with, of course, you know, our concert hall would be an indoor situation, but how could we have an outdoor area that would be conducive to not only people attending, but maybe like free pre-concert talks, and people could just walk by and kind of absorb what they want to. That there are tons of ideas and places that like physical places like the Aspen Music Festival or the Gerald Ford Theater in Vail, Colorado. They've kind of been able to accomplish some interesting outdoor ideas. So I think there's a lot of potential, and a lot of potential to kind of make it sticky in a good way, so that we kind of pull more people in and make it a physical building that feels inclusive and special.
Love that, Carrie. And I think, Chris, you mentioned something earlier about how the best social infrastructure places are obvious to people, that because I was thinking of asking people for help, since I feel like I'm new to the area, but it's like the ones that are really ingrained and beautifully integrated into the community, you can't miss them. And so it feels like when you're there, it's you really can't miss it. And Selby Library came to mind because you go downtown and it's, oh, there's the library, I'm gonna go get a card. So I would love for us to feel totally accessible to the public, and a thing that people can almost come and go to. Not like I have to be here for a very specific reason, but that it feels part of the community and feels like it belongs to the community.
Yeah, I think of like Lincoln Center or the Metropolitan Opera, where even outside you get this amazing view of the Chagall art, and even being outside the building is a great experience on one level. And then of course, you know, seeing, hearing the Met, is a whole nother level of amazing. But yeah, it'd be great that if even outside the building, you enjoy yourself, or on the incredibly hot days we can have, that you'd have a cool shady spot to relax, maybe hear some of our recorded music. Like, here's what you can hear inside, and if we provide plenty of free events so people can experience that, even if they don't have the means to buy $100 tickets, or I think that would be such a great service to the community.
Yeah, I agree. I know that, as we've been talking, talking about the Music Center and what so much of the conversation has been around, service to the community and making the orchestral art form something that serves more of the community. And, having the orchestra having its own home gives so much more opportunity for the organization to be able to do that. Even in just like opening up more space for our education programs to grow too. Our youth orchestra program and the summer music camp, they do such a great job of raising, of helping out students with scholarships, and opening up the program for lots of different participants, lots of folks to come in and receive a high quality music education. And I've been there on in the past, when there's summer music camp going on, and it's we're packed to the gills. And so I love the idea of for the education programs to be able to expand and to be able to offer more of that service as well. And yes, I think I want to bring the conversation to some final thoughts about social infrastructure as we're getting close to the hour. How has this book gotten you thinking about the future? Because this has been a really, really interesting read for me, as I was saying before, since it is so contemporary, but we find ourselves in a very, very different time. How is the book, getting you thinking forward about the future and public space, and especially as we continue to move through this kind of extraordinary pandemic time?
Well, I find overall, I mean, there's a lot of alarming things that he brings up, the problems that need to be addressed. But overall, it's quite a hopeful kind of book, a sort of field of dreams kind of thing. If you build it, he will come. If there's effort put into really building great social infrastructure, along with the critical hard infrastructure, our society can be, so much better. And we've seen it in all the wonderful examples that he brings out. Um, if that can be scaled up in a major way, I think it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, so much of the examples that he brought up opened my eyes to what is possible, and it was a really it left me with a lot of hope. But I want to turn it to Carrie or Mia to share your thoughts too.
I think for me, reading this book reinforced my mother and my aunt, her sister, are both librarians, but it just reinforced to me, I've got to go to the library. I've got to, participate. I was a poll worker for the election in November, and that was a really fabulous experience because I met so many Sarasotans that I wouldn't have necessarily met through work or, social life, whatever. And got to know them and got to know their perspectives because they would just tell you. Of course, as a poll worker, you don't engage, but they just let you know what they're going to do in the in the poll booth. So it just reinforced in me this sense of, that I think, as Chris mentioned, it's really difficult sometimes, not even when there's a pandemic on, but just getting yourself out there and getting yourself in a social situation. But it's important to use the parks and to and the libraries and to protect everything that we have and to build upon it.
Yeah, I think this book really reminded me to be grateful, I guess, for just all of the social infrastructure that's there, and I don't see it maybe, but to just as a mindfulness, need to notice the positive effects that it has on our life around us, and to allow it to have that transformative power by showing up and by supporting it when we can. Another larger lesson for me personally that maybe is not as specific, but there are a lot of statistics in this book, and there's a lot of numbers. And I think in any study of statistics, when you're looking at big groups of numbers, it's how do you organize it and how do you plot those points, which can really affect your narrative. And I think sometimes I get a little cynical or sad when I'm looking at projections for our world. And while Klinenberg doesn't shy away from very real issues, he plots a point of looking for what works and looking for the things that can have a real transformative impact. And just having that mindset, that critical lens, for me, I haven't thought that way in a while, and that was a little inspiring for me. You can look at all of this data and you can plot or trace a way to a better future.
One of those numbers that kind of stuck out to me is his talking about Andrew Carnegie. After his years as a robber baron in the rail and steel industries, but when he turned to philanthropy, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe that he actually funded the formation of 2,800 libraries around the world, and I had no idea it was that great a number.
That was crazy. And didn't it also say that basically no philanthropist has matched him in terms of library and resource philanthropy?
Yeah, I think it's pretty mind-blowing, how much, mind-blowing that he had that much wealth that he was able to give away that much.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. But thankfully we have some wonderful philanthropists in Sarasota who have funded the orchestra and other nonprofits, and we should be very grateful for their help in establishing the great community we've got.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had in our chat here, our friend Laurel Dove, she has a plug for the Embracing Our Differences, the annual Embracing Our Differences Art Festival, which is now on display at the Bayfront Park. And that is an awesome, I mean, the Bayfront Park is fantastic there. It's a really inspiring, large scale art. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it while it's there, but it's a, yes, the name is self-explanatory, Embracing Our Differences, but I can't think of a better example of, using social infrastructure to highlight and promote diversity, which is that was one of the biggest things about the book that stuck with me, is how, what social infrastructure should do is to, introduce us to people who are not like us, and to see see and experience the common humanity there. But Chris, I want to thank you for bringing this book to us, and to the book club. I think it did, it brought up a lot of really pressing issues that are certainly no less pressing. And even though, we've like our public spaces and our face-to-face interactions have been really impacted by the pandemic, it does get me hopeful for, as we've all expressed, it gives me hope for and helps us to think about where we can, what we can prioritize in the future. I think that once it's safe, as to gather publicly, I'm sure we're going to see an explosion in these big, more large scale public events. Hopefully people will be out in the parks, all the time, and using, and utilizing these, more indoor public spaces, I hope. And but I think, his big question is, it's not whether we build social infrastructure, but, where and when. And I do hope that, we continue to adapt and think about and understand the ramifications of this kind of global level of disaster, that how social infrastructure can help us all come back together and heal and become even more resilient. So thank you, Chris, for bringing this really important and this book to us. I would like to turn now, as we start to wrap up, introduce the next things coming up in our Books of Note program, which includes the Books That Move Us book club. Part of that program is the Classical Music in America podcast, which Carrie co-hosts with our artistic advisor, Jeffrey Kahane. Carrie, could you tell us a little bit about the next podcast episode that's coming up? I believe for our fans of Dvorak, it's going to be a huge hit.
Yes. So the next podcast is extremely Dvorak centric. We've got two books, Dvorak in Love by Joseph Svarecki and New Worlds of Dvorak. So the theme of the podcast for this season is classical music in America. And one of sort of the defining periods of Dvorak's life was when he spent quite a bit of time in the US. He had a post in New York, but he also spent time in Iowa, and really embraced Native American and African American music, and had a lot to say about the potential of music, of American music, and what he thought that path would be. So we're thrilled to cover both of these books. And as I think Sarah was mentioning, it will be released on February 16th and recorded in a little less than 2 weeks. Nice.
Yeah, that'll be fantastic. And then our book club comes back on Monday, March 1st. We'll be meeting again. The live Zoom will be taking place at 10:30 a.m. same time, same station. And with this meeting of the book club, we're going to be talking about Musicophilia. This was written by the legendary neurologist Oliver Sacks. And it gets into, he brings up many case studies of his patients and how music occupies and works in some really extraordinary ways and parts of the human mind. And our cellist Chico Matsusaka is introduced this book to our book club and will be leading that discussion. And I have several thank yous, of course. Of course, our sponsor of the Books of Note program is the Gulf Coast Community Foundation. And I want to thank our panelists. Thank you, Mia. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Chris, for again for championing this book to be part of our book club. Thank you to everybody who's been here in the live Zoom, and thanks to everybody who tunes in to the recording of this chat and contributes to the discussion and takes it even further later on Facebook. So again, thank you all for being here. Thanks for making these conversations possible. And we will see you at the next, hopefully at the next meeting of the Books That Move Us book club. You all take care, and we'll see you then.